What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel as we continue our Gods Unchained journey. Now, the game's got me hooked. I'm going to be quite honest. We've put in $120 and we've made it all the way up to Solar Gold. Okay, enjoying it so much. We've been watching content, we've been reading forums, and I want to go ahead and continue on the journey and take it to another level. But here's the thing. I'm interested in putting a little bit more money into the game to go ahead and build out my deck even more. However, I need to make sure that I do my homework, and it's just one of my general rules that I follow when investing in crypto games. Okay, so doesn't matter if it's a game like Axie, Champions Ascension, Big Time, Lost Relics, regardless, got to do a little bit of the homework. Now, I'm not going to go ham, in terms of our investments. We're going to still keep it small. So in terms of the research I wanted to do, I figured I'd go ahead and take you all along this journey. Okay, part of it is learning a little bit about the tokenomics, and part of it is learning a little bit about the community. We've already given some shout outs on some really good content creators, and I want to do some more of that in the future. But right now, what we're going to be covering is a little bit of research that I found that really helped me be able to judge my own personal opinions against, right? So I'm very for the idea of taking other people's opinions and assessing them. However, I need to make sure that I put in my own thoughts and opinions on the topic to be able to make a rational decision. So what I did is I found a presentation that was actually provided and created by Naavik, a video game research company, both in traditional Web 2 and Web 3. Highly recommended. Love their YouTube content. Can't get enough of their research and information. I just love consuming it. So go ahead and check the link below for a link to the same PDF that we're about to go over, and we're going to pretty much go through it slide by slide. I'm going to give you some of my thoughts as we go through. Some of this is going to be information you may already be familiar with. Some of it was brand new to me. So let's go ahead and jump on into it. Make the switch over here. And this is the PowerPoint presentation that was prepared by Alexandria. Now, we're gonna, as we go through it, just going through the table of contents, you can see here, they're talking about the economy, they're talking about analytics, marketplaces, give their own conclusions and personal testimonies, right? So very good synopsis once I've read through it. Going into the executive summary, okay, they're mostly saying that Gods Unchained has successfully circumvented one of the most notorious problems with Web3 economies, which is this high monetary entrance fees, right? And I would definitely agree with it. The fact that you're able to play and as you level up, earn cards that, while they aren't NFTs, allow you to progress in the game, it feels good. It definitely feels like you're not gated up front, even though we can still make some arguments that it's a pay to win type of economy that maybe Western gamers may not be extremely accepting of, at least at this point. But there's more points as we go through that I think will be very important to compare that idea to. They also say that Gods Unchained helps influence players' decisions by the different types of mechanics within the game. They specifically talk about this gauntlet system, right? So you're earning Flux, which is a soft currency inside the game. But in order to do that, you have to play with different gods, which means playing with different decks. So it influences players to build a collection of different decks that you could then use to help you progress throughout the game. Now, while I agree with this concept, it isn't the strategy that I took on, if you've been following the channel. What we've been doing is we decided to focus on one specific god and build out a foundation there, understanding that this is an area that I am not able to progress in, at least at this time. But hopefully with purchasing more in the future, that will change. So interesting that they put out that idea first, and then I took the opposite approach. I tend to be the kind of person that likes to specialize rather than become a jack of all trades, which may hurt me or may not. Leave your opinion in the comments below and let me know what you think. Continuing forward, the NFT minting and fusing process naturally burns NFTs, which I think is a key point. We saw it with Axie, how at one point in time, there was too many NFTs available for people to purchase. And they started to implement burning mechanics. The same types of mechanics are coming across in other games. I think it's important because it does a couple of things. It helps, especially when player bases start to diminish. Remember, when a video game naturally hits the market over 2 or 3 months, player bases tend to drop off until new content is created. It's just the natural flow of things, right? But if players are continuously given the option to burn NFTs, then the supply that's outstanding can shrink and grow as the player base shrinks and grows, which I think will lead to a little bit more of a fluid economy, a more stable economy as things slowly change. They estimate, going back to the slides, they estimate that roughly 80% of players are playing the game simply to play, while 10% are playing to earn, and another 10% are investors. I would love to know a little bit more on their philosophies between coming up with these estimates. 80 10 10 does sound correct, just feels correct when I hear it. Now, from my perspective and the kind of player I am more on the investor side of it, right? So what intrigued me the most about starting Gods Unchained right now is the fact that I know that we're in a bear market. I know that the player counts are lower, which means it's easier for me to make progression from the investment side of it, to be able to buy cards, buy decks, take chances if I think certain cards will appreciate or if I think the token will appreciate. As well, with my career as a CPA, the amount of time that I have to be able to put into games is limited. So because of that, I understand that I would rather put the amount of time that I have when it becomes available into the game, a couple hours here, a couple hours there. But I would love, and this is something that still hasn't been built out in all Web3 games yet, but I would love the idea of being able to be an investor in the economy by simply holding assets, having the ability to influence the game and or help the game economy grow over time. Maybe that's something like staking, maybe that's something like a renting system. It could be 100 different ways, and each different game will implement it as they see fit. But that's a little bit about my perspective. Although they say here, although fun compared to other live Web3 games, GU is probably the middle of the pack compared to Web2 trading card games. Now, that's a correct statement? Is it a fair statement? I'm not too sure. The game has it's been in development since 2019. However, there hasn't really been efforts, at least at this point, to hit massive market adoption. The efforts right now have been to do things that are Web3 native, fixing the situation with gas fees, fixing the situation with how to be able to get the game out to players, what marketplaces, how will the game become available to download. Those are things that are being the focus right now. So I don't know if it's necessarily fair to say that about Web2 games, but it is what it is. Continuing on, just some of the basic stats here that they provide. This is more to give you a foundation. Important things to know: the beta was released in 2019. The Gods token is an ERC20 token. I do think it's important, if you're a crypto gamer out there, you do need to do your homework on the technology that the games are relying on, okay? Don't just assume because it's on Ethereum that that's all you need to know, okay? You need to know the things like, is it ERC20? Is it ERC 1155? All of these things may not have an impact on you right now, but if you do this fundamental work, you'll better be prepared to make more informed decisions when things change or updates come in the future. So roughly at this time, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier. This article or these slides are about 2 years, a little less than 2 years old. I believe they're a year and change old. Okay. So at the time there was 1,500 cards roughly in existence. Now with the release of more with more expansions packs, the card base has increased. So be aware of that. Moving forward, they continue with just the basics of the gameplay. What the idea about the pre-game, the mulligan, early game, mid game, and late game, and they do a little bit of comparison to other trading card games, right? So like the big one I would say is having the ability to choose your god power can make a big impact on the quality of your game before the game has even begun, right? Before you even see the cards that are in your hand. So there are some unique things with Gods Unchained that I think are very interesting, and I'd love to see how they develop out more. They do criticize how the late game can go it feels like it goes a little bit too long, because of the way that the mana wheel doesn't go up by 1 mana in the late game. It takes a couple of turns before you go to from 5 mana to 6, 6 to 7, so on and so forth. I don't know. I feel okay with it at this point. I don't really feel that slowdown. Granted, I'm playing, as you all have noticed, aggro war. So that is as well what it is. I like here, looking back, going back in time, seeing all the different gods and how many cards were available for each god. I like it, right? We don't see... They obviously wanted to present an attempt at balance at the very beginning of the beta phase, which makes complete sense. Really nothing more to see, at least on this slide. Now here, the high-level in-game economy flow. Now, if you're playing for a while, you feel this, right? But seeing it on paper is something that I think is really important. Just because there may be issues that you are intuitively pick up on, but may be more present when you actually see it on paper. Now, I actually think that this is a pretty good way of describing how cards are released, how players buy cards, starting points for players, the progression. But I do think there are some areas that need some tweaking. Maybe back in 2021, this was a little bit more accurate. Maybe now with time, things have changed and this would need to be updated regardless. There's 3 different perspectives. The orange boxes here are from the perspective of the developer, blue boxes as the player, and the black boxes are the resulting pool of either tokens or cards and how those pools come to be generated. Important things to note here, you have A1 or 1A on the left side of the screen, which is typically how I would expect a majority of players start, which is by buying cards that from the new set that were released. Remember, these release sets are also a time for new onboarding of players, which means that may be the way that they get involved into the game. For me, on my end, that's what happened, right? The Winter Wonderland set was being revealed. More marketing or advertising efforts, either on Twitter or on Discord, were being put out there, captured my attention. Even though I'd been keeping it on the back of my radar, and I figured, hey, this might be the best time to join because of the bear market. But I actually didn't follow that path. I actually started on B1, which is on the right side of the screen. And B1, I did this because if you know me, you know that I am not a fan, and it goes back to being a kid. I'm not a fan of, pack breaking or random chance games, whether you're opening packs or whether you're playing a flip of a coin game. Any games that involve chance is not an area that I like. Now, granted, if you are not familiar with my history, I come from the sports card and trading industry, growing up from when I was a kid, nearly 30 years, right, of being able to buying, selling sports cards and memorabilia, including new pack sets, new boxers, new blasters that people open. So I've seen time and time again the hot take, or the hot hand fallacy, which is you hit something and you think you're going to hit something again, so you just keep opening packs over and over and over. That does not sit well with me. I would rather take that same amount of money that I would put into packs, and I would simply go out and buy what I like to buy beforehand. Take the risk out of it, pay a little bit more, but that just associates with me. Now, I don't get this great feeling of when I was a kid opening Pokemon cards and hitting my very first holo Charizard card, right? That feeling is very important and it's great, and I don't take that away from anyone. However, it's not for me, especially as I've gotten older and I've seen how the luck plays out over time. So it is what it is. We bought our own cards. We went ahead and we spent ETH in this case. And we have the ability to go ahead and list those on the IMX Marketplace should we choose. We haven't done that yet. Another important thing to take into consideration on this chart is the Gods token supply pool and how it interacts with the different parts of the game. You can use it for upgrading and minting NFTs. You can win it by participating in the daily play to earn or in the weekend ranked. And you can also understand how the pool gets refilled and gets distributed from over time. So very good knowledge to take into consideration, and helps me come to a better understanding of, is it okay, or at least do I feel comfortable putting in, let's say, another $100 to continue the progression, right? Then they go on to the idea about fusing, which a lot of you are familiar with, that the fact that you're going to need multiple copies of the off-chain cards to be able to fuse, which cost currency, both the Gods token and others, and Flux, to be able to mint your NFTs. Really cool. This is the main utility of the Gods token, at least at this point in time, which is it allows you to mint more. So as the game, if it attempts to go out into the mobile marketplace and try to reach mass adoption, then you're going to start to see players interact more with this minting feature. If you were playing back during the major bull runs of 2020 and 2021, you're already familiar with how players chose to buy and when to sell and when to use God tokens. And I would expect those same type of cycles to replay. The question is just to what degree, right? These are the breakdowns of the upgrading process to go from one rarity of NFT to the next. If you do the math, I think it's roughly 250 of the basic non-NFT cards that you would need in order to rank something all the way up to diamond. Interesting how the Flux and the Gods tokens that are needed don't change throughout the process. They comment later on in these slides and say that it's by design to not hinder progression at the top end, which is interesting. Want to think a little bit more about it, but interesting to note. Now, how do players play and earn? Okay, so you can play in the weekend ranked events where you're competing, and based on how well you do, you earn a slice of the pool for that weekend. You can win ranked games. You can participate in tournaments. This is how typically a player would typically have the chance of earning, by earning their Gods token, liquidating, selling their NFTs and liquidating. These are how the flow of value exits the in-game economy. And that's from the player's perspective. From the investor side or from the speculator side, you're really buying cards or buying the Gods token with the opinion that it's going to go up over time, which is where I'm coming from at this point. Am I wanting to buy a card just to progress? Am I wanting to buy a card because I do think it'll go up in value? Should I not be buying cards? Should I be buying and putting away a little bit of Gods tokens? These are the questions that I have right now, which led me to this research, right? Continuing forward, how does a player earn these tokens and these different types of currencies, right? We went over it right now. How to earn Gods token by the weekend ranks, and it also gives you a breakdown of how that pool is calculated and what does it reward. It rewards high skilled players. Make note of that, high skill competitive players. We're going to come back to it at the end. And how to earn Flux and Stars. These are both very important for the in-game progression, right? But we also need to know, how does the developer earn, right? So the developer, remember, the health of the developer is extremely important. If this game's going to be lasting for 3, 5, 6 years, like they have discussed, how they maintain a healthy development team and company is essential, right? So they're obviously selling expansion packs and they're collecting royalty fees. Now, when Play to Earn was really coming out, the whole idea of royalties was this grand concept of the new way to be able to fund development over time. We haven't reached that yet really with any game, even with Axie at its highest point. So the game development teams are having to rely on more traditional Web 2 models for funding, whether that's receiving investments or putting out DLC or expansion cards. The new method that is present with crypto and Web3 is that now, as the in-game token or the Gods token can now be held by the developers, by the players, by the employees, which is really important. It's the idea of if you're a new employee in a brand new business, earning or getting compensated in some of the stock of the business, right? Now, cryptocurrencies are not stocks, and you need to be aware that they will not act the same way. However, people are speculating that as the game grows, that the Gods token will become more valuable, and that may be the reason why bonuses or employees or founders are holding on to some token. May also be the reason why the tokens depreciated significantly, because some of those that held a lot at the very early stages of the game, if they vested, I now have the ability to sell. So important to note, it could work both ways. Here's the structure, the token structure of Gods, right? There's a portion for Play to Earn, for as reserves being held for Gods Unchained, for the community, for the public sale, the token foundation, and community allocation. Now, every single slice of this pie has different rules about when the tokens are available to go up for sale. So if we look, for example, at the GU reserve, it unlocks after 4 years. So in other words, that reserve is going to stay constant until year 4, and will slowly change over time after that. This is what affects the circulating supply of the token, which has a big impact on what the price is right now. Okay. Other things to note as well is that I would assume over time that because these tokens, I'm going to be more interested to see what happens to token price after the entire 500, or at least a majority, 75%, 80% of the gods tokens are actually on the market. I think at that point we're going to have a little bit more fair assessment to correctly value the gods tokens. However, in the meantime, we can apply basic game theory about what players will do or won't do with it in the short term. Okay. Continuing forward, you can see how the God price has gone down over time. So this, it goes through November 2021. I believe at this point, which is January 2023, that the Gods token's roughly priced at around 20 cents. It gives me a lot of, if you know my history, it gives me a feeling of back when Engine, for example, which was one of the very first platforms I got involved with Lost Relics in crypto gaming, it gives me the feeling about when it was back valued at around 14 cents. Will there be a turnaround? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. We will just have to see how it all plays out. Again, they continue with this comparison between Web2 games, which makes sense. If you're an investor and you're looking at it from the business perspective of how the company or the game will perform, especially with its competition in the open market, you need to at least have an understanding of where it stands. Fair to say right now, the game is way too small, and I don't think there's any reason to believe that it shouldn't be, at least at this point. That does not mean that it does not have potential. So you can see here how the players and the daily active users has changed over time. Remember, this is covering March 2021 through 2020. So we're seeing the bull run here. Okay, this is when Web3 games was at its all-time high. Okay, before we saw some of the fall off. Interesting to note that the ratio between buyers and sellers, the daily active users, interesting to take a note of so that you can compare where we're at right now in 2023 to where we were and how things change over time. Remember, I believe this also includes, or this is something I need to do a little more homework on. I want to know more about when the Gods team implemented the removal of bots, and I would like to see how the numbers have changed over time. I know that some of those resources are available, and I've took a look at them. We're not going to cover them, at least in this video. So interesting. What I found interesting on this slide here about the trading performance really isn't the volume or the trade count. It really is more about the active wallets per month and the average value traded. For most crypto games and for most crypto projects in general, we tend to operate off of Moore's law, which is this idea of network effects and how those network effects can be valued, right? The basic formula is you take the active amount of participants in a network, the square root, of the active participants times the averaged value. So if we were to do that in May, 25,000 active wallets, this may include bots, like I said, I'm not sure. 25,000 active wallets with an average trading price of $1.83, that would value the network of Gods Unchained at a roughly like 1.1 billion. Okay, and that would be split up between the token value and the NFT values, right? So interesting to see that. Is it worth that? Is it not? The numbers have gone down since then, which again piques my interest a little bit in terms of coming up with a valuation. The IMX Marketplace is extremely important to take note of, specifically because of the fact that they're continuing to grow, and I believe they've made a direct investment, or they may outright own the studio that develops Gods Unchained. That's again another area that I want to do more homework on. But IMX is getting royalties, and they discuss here the benefits of IMX with implementing ZK rollups and the gas fee removal to make everything easier for gamers to be able to transact on the blockchain. Again, here going through the process of actually making purchases and how it works. And that they also note that there are other marketplaces too, which they give good commentary on. That they say that what is a great feature about Web3 is that I, for example, if I had the technical know-how, could spin up my own marketplace that works directly by pulling the information on the blockchain and would allow pretty much third parties, players, to be able to build out their own systems to help improve the game and the network effects. And if you look back at the history, the economy of video game, let's say player-based organizations in video games, one of the things that stands out the most is that the biggest video games, player bases are the ones that have created actually the best third-party marketplaces. Now, these are the marketplaces that have gotten, I'm sorry, I said marketplaces, websites. These are the websites that have been the most popular. So if you think back about games like RuneScape, World of Warcraft, many of the others, they all had their player-based websites that were generating revenue from the players. So in essence, a way for the network, the economy of the game, to exit the in-game economy and continue to exist outside of the game and actually to flourish even more. There's a common thought experiment that people say, who actually made World of Warcraft? Was it the developers at Activision Blizzard, or was it the players, right? So it's a dance, it's a tandem, it's both. The answer is both. So seeing that players are more easily able to use tools on the blockchain to be able to progress the economy of these different games is fascinating, exciting, and I want to see more of it. Again, of course, the marketplaces of IMX takes their fees, and so does the royalty, so does the developers, which is important. Like I said earlier, pretty much giving you a breakdown of the fees. Interesting to note that the fees are reduced the higher you go up in terms of the royalty rates, the higher you go up in the NFT scarcity. So diamonds pay a less percentage than meteorites cards in terms of royalties. Again, they say here, to incentivize or not to disincentivize the higher end of the market. A funny example here that they give their personal testimony of how they played, and this matches how I played. The only difference is they bought 3 decks here, and they bought an aggro deception deck, a regen nature deck, and an aggro light deck. This isn't what I did. I went into just simply 1 deck, but I followed almost this exact same process, just with a little bit less in funding, probably about half. They did $240 as their initial investment. I believe I did $125. So the onboarding for the crypto rank onboarding and the education that it comes with it. How do you actually acquire crypto in the first place? Then how do you get it into the game? Very important to note that they took 4 hours. It took me less than that, but I'm also more familiar with crypto gaming, right? Probably about an hour to make the decisions, move the funds, and then make my purchases. They also propose improvements to the game, which this is really important here. The main key one that they say is that it's hard as a player to sell your cards. And this is important because it is true that the NFT market's always going to be less liquidable than the FT market, the God's token market, just because of the nature of them being unique assets. They actually are posing the solution that there should be part of the in-game God's Unchained treasury should go back to buying cards from the game. This is the idea of like stock buybacks, which can be used as an accounting method or a business method to increase the value of your stock, or in this case of the NFT holdings that the game generates. Or the value of the NFT that the game created, which could be very important. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see this being rolled out in other games as well. I don't know if that's going to happen with God's Unchained anytime soon, but it's important to know. They also recommend dusting cards for cosmetic rewards, pretty much an incentive for burning. So I get it. They also say that people don't earn enough, right? This idea about staking your gods could be a solution, or introducing play and earn, which we've already got. I don't know if these are necessarily the solutions. I think the important thing to know is that without really being able to accurately predict the value or concurrently say what the value of the God's token is, without being able to make that assessment, without that strong foundation, we can't really ever say whether you're earning enough or not enough, or what the limit is, right? Because you could be earning God's tokens today for 20 cents, and if the game achieves what it wants, those God tokens could be worth $3, $4, $5 in the future each, right? So you could be earning them, it just may not be apparent, and that is more potential value. But until we really understand, like I said, a foundational valuation effort for the God's token or for these NFTs within this game, there's really no way to say. But I understand that players are going to continue to make this comparison and make these statements as they play, at least in the short term. At the end of the day, they also say that there's not enough incentives or utility for rarer NFT cards, and I would probably agree with that. We probably need some more incentives for owning diamond cards rather than a meteorite. Something that goes a little bit further than just dollar value due to scarcity. But that pretty much wraps it up here as we get all these notifications. Apologies for that. But yeah, they gave their final remarks here, and this is something that I would want to also comment on. They say that the GU team has built an economy that rewards skill and not effort, and that's really important, they say, for fighting bots. I actually agree. I agree with the fact, but I actually think there's something more important to that. I think that when we're discussing video game economies, especially in crypto, this idea of being able, if you're going to be able to extract value from the game, value needs to also enter into the game world, right? And it needs to be an even flow. You can't have more pouring out than goes in. So how do you create an open system that allows everyone to potentially benefit? There's not an answer right now. However, there is speculation that if you choose to make it a more competitive atmosphere for being able to extract wealth from the game, then that means that a smaller percentage of the player base is going to actually be able to earn, which makes it much more feasible for the players that do make it past that threshold to earn. So the possibility of earning is probably more important, at least at this time, than actually earning for all players. And it matches very well with the competitive trading card game, where the goal is to be the best that you can be and climb the ladder and make it to that top tier. We see this across other sports as well, where the higher echelon of players are the ones that actually receive the rewards, versus, so like a Major League Baseball player is receiving their large contract versus a minor league player that's pretty much working for the same that you could earn at a non-skilled job. So does this mean that the economy of Gods Unchained is more likely to succeed? I would say yes. The question is just who will it succeed for, and how large will it succeed for those players that are at the top. Right now, at the smaller player base, maybe I'm benefiting that there's less players, less competition. I'm able to climb the ranks higher, being that we made it to Solar Gold. Maybe that's not going to be the case later, or maybe it is, because I'm just so happen to be investing in the meta that players have yet to figure out an answer to. We will see. But that pretty much covers our concepts, our thoughts on how to analyze Gods Unchained. Granted, this is with past outdated information. So as I do more research and as we go forward, we will be applying more current information to the analysis to make our own decisions. Spoiler alert, just from reading this and the other information that I did in order to make this video, I've already come up with an idea of investing more into the cards that I want to improve my deck. So stay tuned to the next episode so that we can talk about what improvements I have made. And in the meantime, thank you for watching the video. Click the like button and go ahead and give us a subscribe. It just helps out all the content creators in Gods Unchained, helps promote the game. If you love the game, support the channel. We'll be here for you guys. And again, thanks a lot. I'll catch you all on the next one. Peace out.